Hello everyone. Recently, because one of my hobbies is seeing the things I love dying a death, I've been seeing a lot of Doctor Who talk on my Twitter timeline. Things that are just total cope for the reality that Doctor Who is simply dying. Its days are numbered, its direction is going the exact same way as absolutely everything else you see on mainstream television these days. And I think this tweet sums it up perfectly. So the Radio Times put out an article saying Doctor Who was streamed 10 million times on iPlayer over Christmas, and we obviously have a Doctor Who fan saying, oh, the rest in peace Doctor Who crowd are being real quiet now, huh? And we will get back to this article a little later, but there is an awful lot of cope of fans of new Doctor Who, not New Who as in Christopher Eccleston onwards. I'm talking New Who from Peter Capaldi onwards, where, in my opinion, it went completely to the dogs. Writing was horrendous, overall arcing stories started making little to no sense. As mentioned in my last video on Doctor Who, it was starting to go openly more and more woke, or postmodern neo-Marxist, or intersectional, pick any of those words you prefer, and generally it just became a chore to watch. So I watched Jodie Whittaker's first season, reviewed it, and then never really paid mind to it again. I'd read the odd Doctor Who article, watch the odd video essay, especially JX's, which is very good, about why Jodie Whittaker's run was awful. So I'm somewhat caught up on the lore that absolutely no one seems to care about, because if they did care, they'd actively hate it like I do, and like I imagine a lot of people watching this video do. But despite pretty much getting over the fact that Doctor Who was already dead to me, a lot of people were still watching it because, I mean, it's entertainment at the end of the day, people can watch what they want. But I decided to give the David Tennant, Catherine Tate episode yet another go, and it was horrendous. Again, I have streamed a review of that with my friend Haryan, and again, we both hated it, and we go into detail as to why. So I didn't watch any of the other specials. Instead, I was watching the entirety of the discussion around it. And again, it seems that people who have clearly been Doctor Who fans for some years absolutely hate both the David Tennant 3-episode specials and the Christmas special introducing the 15th Doctor with the new companion. And I thought I'd give it a go, but then I kept seeing clips that were being advertised about the direction that Doctor Who was going. So we're going to go through some of them and show you why I think Doctor Who is going to go the way of Marvel, the way of pretty much every other franchise that Hollywood gets its hands on, and is effectively just going to be a zombie franchise where people simply watch it because they feel they have to, because they say they're fans of it, whereas everyone else who has a brain is not watching it because it's total garbage. You'll also see why it's one of the reasons that one of my New Year's resolutions is to try and write a sci-fi novel. So, let's look at some clips from the last David Tennant special. Clips that are essentially putting a gun to the back of Doctor Who's head. Yes, they are that bad.
It's time.
So as you can see, David Tennant dies in the new special's shock horror and starts to regenerate, but it turns into a bit of a problem. So he's just been shot by the toy maker by this completely oversized, ridiculous laser cannon, which, oh, you know, it's campy, so that's okay. But he starts saying, oh, this feels weird, and then says,
Pull.
And so for anyone who doesn't know what's going to happen, please take a seat, because you'll need it if you're a fan. Yes, that what is pretty much how I think every hardcore Doctor Who fan reacted when they found out about bi-generation. Over the Christmas period, I've been talking to people about Doctor Who, and a lot of the long-time fans, especially people that love David Tennant, were like me. They watched the first episode, thought it was so dreadful they didn't watch any more, and then when I told them about bi-generation and some of the other clips that we're going to go through this video, they had the same video. What the hell has happened? Why has Russell T Davies gone so mad? And the answer is simply incentives. Everyone in media who writes shows and all that, they're incentivized to go madder and madder and madder with their writing because they are told it doesn't really matter, people like the quirky things, and as long as you're woke, who really cares? And I'm not even going to be joking here, I'm speeding this up by 4 times. This is a full 2 minutes of the Doctor just bi-generating and having a whole camp moment about it. Going, oh wow, look at this, isn't this great? There are 2 Doctors now, ha. Yeah, the whole time, the toy maker's in the background, still with his oversized gun, not shooting anyone.
Behold the game of the Time Lords.
Yeah, it took a full 2 minutes for him to react and then actually do something about the fact that he's trying to kill the Doctor. I don't know why he's trying to kill him again. I don't know why he wouldn't think if he kills the Doctor again, he'd have to deal with 3 or 4 now instead. Anyway, after that, they defeat him, and it's all good. We've simply got 2 Doctors now. And you got to bear in mind, for those of you like me who skipped out on a few seasons, especially when Jodie Whittaker started, the Doctor's basically a god now. Yeah, the backstory is that the Doctor is actually not a Time Lord. It's a totally separate species that the Time Lord experimented on to give themselves the power of regeneration. It actually turns out the Doctor is quite literally indestructible. He can regenerate millions of times. It's probably actually completely unlimited how many times he can regenerate, which, I mean, this was a thing I didn't like about the Matt Smith ending. Matt Smith was supposed to die. That was supposed to be the last generation of the Doctor, and instead the lore at the time was that the Time Lords granted him a whole new set of regenerations. How they do that exactly, nobody particularly knows. Apparently no one cared at the time either. But the whole idea that the Doctor is literally indestructible and can never die, yeah, kind of ruins it for hardcore fans. I mean, yeah, I get it. Regenerating from one Doctor to another, that is a symbolism of death and rebirth. That was absolutely fine, but the idea was that it was limited. But even worse now, that's no longer limited. But to make it even worse, now the Doctors don't even die. And to those of you who haven't seen this at this point and are thinking, wait a minute, but how is this going to work now? There is only one TARDIS, I guess one of them is going to stay on Earth. No, Russell T Davies had an answer for that too.
We won the game. You get a prize, honey.
Again, apologies to all long-term Doctor Who fans there. Yes, that scene hurts me just as much, and I look exactly like David Tennant there when I first saw this clip. But again, this is simply following on from the trend of things like Marvel, things like Star Wars, things like anything else. They can't grow up. They can't let go. Doctor Who, for as much as it was a kid's show, still had very deep and real themes of loss, of things are gone and can never be back, of there are no happy endings in this story. And in this story, no. Everything just works out great. Hey, Donna's back. She's got her memories back. She remembers being with the Doctor. Isn't that great? Oh, you had a hug with Wilfred, whose actor Bernard Cribbins died in real life before this even aired, which, to be honest, I probably would have re-edited and just taken that bit out. This whole, hey, David Tennant, you didn't have to die. You can go on adventures again with Donna. And it just sucks. I mean, you can say, oh, but it makes sense in universe. The Toymaker's dimension, where he could do whatever he want, was still lingering after he was defeated. Well, okay, if the case of the Toymaker is that things that have altered our dimension stick after his dimension is eviscerated, then, you know, how the hell do we get that to work? But either way, I don't know why we're having an argument about the lore when the idea in and of itself just sucks. It is the coddling of the Doctor Who fan's mind. It is not in any way an interesting or even remotely challenging, because that's a word they like to say, oh, you want to be challenged by media. It's not a challenging concept at all. It's just, oh, everything in the world's great when evil is defeated. No. No, the idea of Doctor Who is that sometimes sacrifices have to be made to defeat the evil. And from what we've seen from these 3 specials, and presumably as Doctor Who goes forward, is that actually nothing has to be sacrificed, which makes for a really, really tedious story. So that was the fans' reactions. I wonder what Russell T Davies had to say about this.
Bi-generation. It's a new thing. It's the 60th. Imagine how much fans love new things and will really rejoice when this happens.
I think this clip really does just vindicate this meme that I've made of Russell T Davies just killing Doctor Who and enjoying the fact that the old fans are obviously not going to like this. This is before their episodes even aired, and he is already understanding that what he has written is practically the opposite of fan service to long-time Doctor Who fans. If you have watched that clip and see it as anything other than this meme I've made of Russell T Davies almost rejoicing over the fact that he's ruining Doctor Who for people like me, you've got to realise that the reason he's laughing there is because he knows what he's written is garbage, and not only is it garbage, it's garbage that most people like me, as has been proven by the fact that Twitter had a bit of a meltdown about it, apart from the absolute morons that this show is catering to now, absolutely hate it. Told my dad about it. He's been a lifelong Doctor Who fan. He even watched the Jodie Whittaker episodes, almost like he was on autopilot. No, watched the first Doctor Who special, went, nah, it's not for me anymore. I told him about this. He said, oh, well, they're just writing absolute nonsense now, I can't deal with it anymore. And the classic reaction from these Twitter tourists, since frankly that's what they are, is just, oh, Doctor Who's always been silly. And yes, it has, but it's also always been grounded. It's always had something to say. You can't have a show that is 100% silly and at the same time has deep, meaningful cultural critiques in it.
Actually, I've had this idea for years. I've always wanted, instead of going back and meeting old doctors, I've always wanted the Doctor to talk to his new version. Why has it never been done before? How can you resist the two of them having an adventure at the same time?
See what I mean? It's this classic thing you see from all writers, directors, etc. for the past almost decade when it comes to these large-scale, big franchise writing teams. It's, oh, we want to do it, so we're going to do it. But do they ever stop and think, wait, is this not very good? Did they ever think, how is this actually going to fit in the story and the world that has been created by, in this case with Russell T Davies, not just him, but hundreds of other writers that have been working on Doctor Who in the past? Because there's not particularly any explanation in the episode as far as I'm aware for bi-regeneration, but if someone in the comments can let me know what the lore behind it is, I would love to know. If it is simply just that the Doctor is a literal god, then so be it. Doctor Who has now just become so uninteresting that I am literally just watching it for the slow motion car crash that it is. I can't see myself watching it seriously again until they retcon pretty much everything from post Matt Smith. Yes, I am not a particular fan of Peter Capaldi's era either. It did have one of the best Doctor Who episodes in it, Heaven Sent, which did have the incredible idea of the Doctor being imprisoned for billions of years and having to punch through a wall made of a material harder than diamond. Great idea and great execution in that episode. Doesn't make up for the fact that there's pretty much no other decent episode throughout his run as the Doctor, which is a bit of a shame because Peter Capaldi was a good Doctor, just terrible writing. But anyway, if you think Russell T Davies saying, I want the Doctor to talk to himself, therefore bi-generation was bad enough, wait until you hear his own fan fiction, which, by the way, if the lead scriptwriter is writing fan fiction, that effectively means that this is going to be canon. So take it away, Russell T Davies, you complete moron.
I think down the timeline, they all separated. They all went like that. All the Doctors came back to life with their individual TARDISes.
So yeah, it's not just David Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa that have ended up bi-regenerating. Apparently we've now got 2 David Tennants, or I guess 3 if you count the one in a parallel universe, because Russell T Davies can't help himself. We can't have the loss of William Hartnell, Tom Baker and the other Doctors. We have to have the Doctor not as one continuum, not one timeline where he travels throughout space and time to have adventures. No, we have to have literally infinity of them. Because at the end of the day, if you have an indestructible Doctor who now not only regenerates but bi-generates, so he splits in 2 every time, and that all happened in the past, I don't understand why in the end you're not going to have a universe that is effectively made up of nothing but the Doctor. Like, this idea is just so ridiculous, I don't even know why I'm entertaining it in my brain. It is such an absolutely ridiculous thing to say that it should just be dismissed. I'm bringing this meme up again. Russell T Davies doesn't care about Doctor Who anymore. He just wants to write his own fan fiction. Doesn't care about the past. He doesn't care about the future of Doctor Who. He just cares about what feels good now. And what feels good now is, as I went through in my last video, pushing woke propaganda to make himself feel good about himself and to have absolutely nothing bad ever happen in the Doctor Who universe, because if that happens, it will make him sad. It's pathetic. And the thing is that it's not just the plot and the lore of Doctor Who that he is completely ruining. He's completely ruining the tones of the current Doctor Who episodes as well. Here is a little snippet from the Christmas special, the special that I didn't bother watching because it was this exact clip they were using to advertise it. Take it away. Russell T Davies wrote this. He wanted a song in it. He wanted a song about eating babies for some reason. Got a songwriter to write a song about eating babies and thought, yes, this would be a very good idea to have in a Doctor Who episode. Again, this is just pure silliness. And again, I don't mind there being silly aspects to Doctor Who, but I'm not even joking about this. I'm going to leave it going in the background. Because throughout this entire sequence, I'm not joking, it's a whole, minute and a half, 2-minute sequence of goblins dancing around this conveyor belt with a baby on it that they're seasoning and eating. And I've seen some people on Twitter saying, oh my god, the writers of Doctor Who are pro-baby eating. No, that's a silly way to go about the criticism here. There is nothing wrong with writing some sort of fantasy or sci-fi novel where evil people are singing about the evil thing they're about to do, but you're gonna have that in the tone of some sort of comedy, some sort of actual musical theatre. It's not the type of thing you should be putting in Doctor Who. And I have to say that the main issue I actually take with this from a story point of view is that, as you heard from the start, they say this as they are about to be serving it to this Jabba the Hutt goblin, who can clearly eat that entire baby in one mouthful. And by the way, I am going to just repeat this clip because I want you to focus on the lyrics at the top. He's the Goblin King, yes, the Goblin King. He's not a myth, he's an actual thing. I mean, already terrible, terrible lyric writing. But then they just say, here's the king, here's the king, here's the king goblin. We love the king, we sing ding-a-ling. I mean, this is just words of someone who's given up writing the song at that point. They're just trying to fill the time out. Just don't sing. Replace the singer with some sort of guitar solo or something like that. This isn't difficult. He can eat, he can eat. What great lyrics. And again, there, 500 poppies with golden fur. Apparently he can eat 500 puppies. And you expect a baby to last 3 days? Come on. I mean, you can listen to this song yourself. I don't want to risk copyright any more than I already have. And honestly, it's not actually a bad song. It's the lyrics and the way that the whole thing fits into the story that is a massive problem. And not only is just the idea of the goblins having a massive festival over one baby to feed to a king for 2 seconds, the problem gets even worse because then the Doctor and Ruby fall down onto the conveyor belt, and this is how they handle the situation.
And I would just like to say, why stop singing? Rocket Janice!
And again, just going to completely speed up this bit. They actually unironically just start singing, and it actually starts to work. Again, people eating goblins have 2 people literally fall down, completely surrounding them. That's basically a free dinner, and oh no, they'll sing, it'll be fine. Anyway, yes, they do manage to get out of there and then end up defeating the goblins by going back in time. It's this whole story. I read a quick plot summary of it. It sounded like it could have been an alright Doctor Who episode, but if you watch clips like this, again, I showed these clips to my friends and family who were fans of Doctor Who, and all they can do is pull this David Tennant face. All they can think is, what the hell is going on with Doctor Who? And can I blame them? Absolutely not. I was ahead of the curve with all this. I paid attention to Doctor Who throughout my life, and it's a completely different show to what it was when Russell T Davies was originally writing the show. I don't understand how he's gone from a show that managed to make Doctor Who one of Britain's greatest cultural exports of the 21st century to one that is frankly just laughed at around the world. Doctor Who has gone the way of Star Wars. The only people that really care about Doctor Who now are effectively overgrown children. And again, I know everyone says, oh, it's a kids show, but I've shown it time and time again, and I've given examples time and time again. There are plenty of times Doctor Who was a lot more than a kids show. It was regularly more than just a kids show. But if you just want a kids show, go ahead. I will keep looking at you with this David Tennant face, because that is how children who are in their 30s and 40s deserve to be looked at. But it's about time we actually get back to this Radio Times article, which, as you can see, Doctor Who was streamed over 10 million times on iPlayer over this Christmas. The figures are in, and it's something to be celebrated. At least that's the impression you get until you realise this is fake news. The BBC has released the viewing figures from Doctor Who over the festive period and has revealed the sci-fi show from 2005 onwards was watched a whopping 10.01 million times. In other words, it wasn't just the Doctor Who Christmas special that was watched. It was over all episodes of Doctor Who, which are all up on BBC iPlayer and which I can't watch because I'm not giving them money to ruin my franchise even more. During the Christmas week, 25th to 31st December, viewers all flocked to iPlayer and set a new all-time record according to the BBC. Doctor Who Christmas Special, The Church on Ruby Road, was the 5th most watched series through the BBC's festive fortnight, and it received 1.79 million streams over the festive period, which saw the first full episode of Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor as he met his companion Ruby Sunday, Millie Gibson. So in other words, this article was trying to say, oh, the new episode of Doctor Who, 10 million views on iPlayer alone. No, in reality what has happened is that it has made up less than a fifth of the viewing figures after it, within its week of debuting, by the way. It was one of the lesser watched special episodes of the week, despite the fact that it is supposed to be that episode's week. Meaning that what more than likely happened is that people saw this episode or heard of this episode and thought, you know what, if I'm going to watch Doctor Who, I'd rather watch one of the good ones, and went, back in time to possibly the old David Tennant series, or, slightly more likely they were catching up on the terrible episodes that David Tennant came back for. I mean, it's such a poor way to come back and effectively ruin your own legacy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to re-watch New Who in the same way, because like Game of Thrones, like Star Wars, like any other franchise that you can name, I know where it's going, and it's not going to a good place. Sometimes it's better to let a story end and let people's imaginations run wild with them, because that is the opposite of what has happened here. And the thing is that they didn't even need to put out this fake news, because according to Wikipedia, when it comes to the ratings, the UK viewers for the 3 specials and then the Christmas special, they're all within the 7 million range. They range from 7.61 million to 6.85 million, which, to be honest, for Doctor Who, it's not even that bad. No doubt that is due to people's curiosity to watch David Tennant come back, and honestly, it's quite a remarkable recovery from the Jodie Whittaker era, which ended up averaging about, under 5 million views by the end of it. But I think the curiosity will quickly wear off. At least the Doctor Who fans that I know simply aren't watching it anymore. So maybe these new tourists will become long-term fans of what Doctor Who is turning into under the new Russell T Davies, and if they do, well done. Enjoy your slop. But given the amount of online defending that is going on for Russell T Davies and for the viewing figures, I get the feeling that the showrunners understand that they have basically just completely insulted their core and old audience, and are so trying to say, it's you that are out of touch, it can't be me that's out of touch. It is the old fans that are wrong. The thing is that I know they're self-aware about this, because not only from the clips we have seen, they have been implying it, but when interviewed about it, they're completely open about it. The new Doctor Who episodes will upset die-hard fans, says Russell T Davies. Showrunner says the series is taking a sly step towards fantasy, which may annoy those who see it as a hard science fiction show. That's probably because it is a hard science fiction show. This is exactly why people like me and a lot of die-hard fans stopped watching when it became silly and it turned the Time Lord Doctor Who into a literal god of the Time Lords. It's not very entertaining when your main character can literally never die. Speaking to the Radio Times about the special episode, Russell T Davies said the show is taking a sly step toward fantasy, which will annoy people to whom it is a hard sci-fi show. Episode 2 next year is wildly fantasy, completely making up scenarios on screen that we've never been able to show before. Why not write a different show then? Why not go and write for Rings of Power? The episode will air at tea time on BBC One on Christmas Day and has been called a blockbusting adventure. From what I can tell, it was alright. Quipping about how he got the broadcaster to agree to a show, he said he kicked in the door. I was just a bit jealous of all those other shows that were getting a bigger taste of the pie, so this Christmas, the enemy is goblins, he said. This feels like the writer's equivalent of having a midlife crisis, though I suppose he's 60, so that's more of a late life crisis. Apologies to all those older Doctor Who fans out there. Time will get me too one day. But again, it's a weird thing with writers today. They don't seem to like their own fan bases. It's like recently, I'm sure I'll do a bigger video on it, but the director or writer, I think, of the next Star Wars film, which I think is going to revolve around Rey Skywalker. Oh, I'm so sorry that I just referred to her as Rey Skywalker, but I'm keeping that in anyway. She was just at a talk and just said, in front of hundreds of people and in front of millions of people over the internet, I want men to feel uncomfortable at the next Star Wars film. These people just hate their own audience, and it's the same here. Russell T Davies hates the fact he's going back to write for a sci-fi show, and so has decided, well, I made it great, so now I'm going to ruin it by making it into a fantasy show instead. Which, if you wanted to go write a fantasy show, don't come back to a sci-fi show and make that fantasy. Go and make your own thing. Honestly, I can see early 21st century media being a rather large module when it comes to any sort of studies into media about how not to treat long-form stories and franchises. Because people will be going to the cinema, Cinema wouldn't be dying if there were passion projects like Oppenheimer coming out all the time, instead of total sludge like Star Wars, Marvel, and the rest of them coming out that have some passion once in every 10 projects, and the rest of the time it's just complete sludge with writing that honestly boggles the mind. And it's the exact same here. My god, I wish that was the end of it, but no. Not only is the main showrunner giving the middle finger to pretty much every diehard fan out there when it comes to what the tone of Doctor Who is, what the show is all about, the lore of the show. Of course, you've still got openly people within the show saying, yes, it's going to be completely woke, or some other euphemism to indicate that. New Doctor Who companion Millie Gibson. There are so many controversial elements this season, and it's what we need. Yes, that's what we need. That's not what's been ruining Doctor Who at all. Open social commentary along with terribly written episodes. You can make Doctor Who a good show while at the same time having decent social commentary. The problem is that especially from when Stephen Moffat took over, it slowly ramped up the social messaging they wanted within the episodes, while the writing took a nosedive. Moffat luckily was able to control himself for a couple of seasons, but my god, as I say, when it got to Peter Capaldi, it was everywhere. And Russell T Davies did have some aspects that were a bit of social commentary, but he definitely put the writing first and foremost. But it's the opposite now, as they are literally all telling us. Russell T Davies literally saying the writing doesn't matter, and now we've got companions saying, yeah, we try and make this show controversial, which basically means as safe as possible when it comes to the new elite type of luxury beliefs. So when talking about the upcoming episodes, Millie Gibson says, Ruby has a relationship with the Doctor that I don't think the audience has necessarily seen before. She really humanises him and balances him to be more like her. Really more innocent and pure and human, which is so beautiful to watch. That was literally the entirety of the Doctor's arc throughout Russell T Davies's run. The whole point of Rose and the whole reason the Doctor falls in love with Rose is because he realises he loves humans and wants to be more human. Because initially, when he first comes back, he's obviously a hardened Doctor due to the Time War and needs to humanise himself again. So again, very touristy thing to say that, oh, we're seeing the Doctor become a bit more like a human because he's got a human companion. It's like, no, that happens a lot in Doctor Who. That's kind of the whole theme of it. Gibson also says that this season has an element of Black Mirror in it. Not so much at the start, but it definitely grows darker, and will almost certainly pique the interest of Whovians too. She reckons the new episodes will attract a lot of Gen Z viewers. Well, it's not attracting me, as they go with the times and represent a lot of faces and themes that are really important to see on television. Oh, see what I mean? It's all about that representation. Representation is definitely a large aspect of wokery, intersectionality, whatever you want to call it. Davies, of course, has long been praised for his commitment to inclusive storytelling, especially his spotlighting of LGBT stories from Queer as Folk to It's a Sin. His anniversary specials featured a trans teenage girl Rose, played by Heartstopper's Yasmin Finlay, prompting 144 complaints from viewers, admittedly a tiny proportion of the 7.6 million who viewed. I don't even know what they'd complain about, really. There was nothing that breaks Ofcom's rules or breaks BBC regulation. I guess the only thing you could say is that it's really insulting to people with brains because of how brain dead the story was, but I don't think that's what they were complaining about. The Outrage Brigade will probably continue to clutch their pearls as the new series progresses. There's so many controversial elements to this season, the good sort of controversy, and it's what we need to see in our tellies. Yes, I'm not imagining that the Doctor will put on his jackboots and trench coat and start singing Heil. Gibson says some people, she adds, might think this isn't the Doctor Who I know, but I'm really excited to see it. It's really cool, and that they're doing concepts like these and changing it up. Yes, but the problem is that they've really been trying to do that, especially since Jodie Whittaker's era, and it just ended up being awful writing. So if we're saying we're changing it up, again, they mean from when it was good. They're changing it up to be more fancy. Great, I don't watch Doctor Who for fancy elements. Oh, well, there's going to be more representation in it. I don't watch it for representation. I don't think that matters. I want to see crazy aliens doing evil stuff that the Doctor stops. Oh, well, it would be really attractive to Gen Z. Everybody except Gen Z. I'd even argue most of Gen Z hate the stereotype of what Gen Z is, because the Zoomers are completely moronic. You just have to go on TikTok for 5 seconds to understand that Zoomers genuinely don't know anything. Again, all polling, when they are asked, what do you think X, Y, or Z means, the biggest one I always bring up is socialism and capitalism. They either get them mixed up, majority of them either get them mixed up or admit they don't know. Because despite the fact that more people are going to university than ever, especially the Zoomer generation, somehow they're coming out with less worldly knowledge than the previous generations, barely any of whom went to university. But anyway, yeah, that's where Doctor Who's up to, I'm afraid to say. It's just absolutely crammed with showrunners that hate the old fans, hate the fact that the modern world still has previous generations in it, that don't like the way that the high status culture is going, this whole wokery stuff for those that don't understand my jargon. And they are happy to keep pushing it and openly tell you that they hate you because, frankly, they are trying to browbeat you with this propaganda. And that's all Doctor Who is at this point. As I said in my last episode, it's late stage woke propaganda. The writing isn't going to improve. I can only see one way that it is going to improve, and I'll let Christopher Eccleston explain what that move is.
Sack Russell T Davies, sack Jane Tranter, sack Phil Collinson, sack Julie Gardner, and I'll come back.
So here's the thing, Christopher Eccleston did not have a good experience on the Doctor Who set, and so he obviously has a lot of personal issues with all the producers and showrunners of Doctor Who, and as he points out, most of them are actually still there. And some of those showrunners that he mentioned, the producers, have got their own production company now called Bad Wolf, and they took over the production, or at least part of the production, from BBC Studios when it came to producing these new specials of Doctor Who and obviously this next season of Doctor Who. And that's why you're seeing such improvement to the CGI and production values of Doctor Who. But the problem is that they are run by people that Christopher Eccleston absolutely hates. And the thing is that, hey, if we can get rid of these people, and that means that not only we get rid of Russell T Davies, but we replace it with someone like Christopher Eccleston, I reckon he'd only join back if they were good writers, because he clearly cares about the fans. He did one season of Doctor Who, openly said he detested it, never wanted to go back to it, but he has his loyalty to the fans, and that's the exact type of people we need in production at this point, because it's either full of people that don't care or actively hate the fan base. So, yes, I'm completely with Christopher Eccleston, albeit for much less personal reasons, but I think we'd agree that it needs a complete shake-up of the production team, because somehow the old production team have got back, including the showrunner, and they've practically killed it. It's actually quite an achievement, but it is completely and well within the current pattern that we are seeing throughout the world of media today. Video games are going pretty well at the moment, to be fair, but when it comes to television and film, we're having an absolutely dire run when it comes to things being created, and you never know. It might end up being that most of these people have to lose their jobs because they're not making the money anymore, and it allows for a good renaissance of excellent television and film being produced. But this is the type of thing that we need to wait till the end of the Clown Decade to see. For those of you who don't know my Clown Decade timeline, it's going to get worse till about 2027, 2028, and then start to get rapidly better. Because we are seeing these movements collapse all around us. The Marvels made barely any money, and you will probably see the next Star Wars movie be a total flop, because I have no interest in seeing it. I only have interest in watching EFAP tear it to absolute shreds, the way they did with The Rise of Skywalker, the way they did with The Last Jedi, the way they have done with Ahsoka. I cannot wait. So I suppose that's one good thing about this whole problem with TV and media and all that. It's given way to the rise of some great YouTube channels that give me, frankly, endless entertainment in lieu of these films. Which would I rather have? I would rather see them talking about good films and about what they love about them. However, the odd bad one they can absolutely rip on would be great, but we're in a time where all they can do is rip on bad ones, because that is all we're getting. Anyway, before I go rambling on, that is all I had for you today. To fellow Doctor Who fans, I am so sorry that this is happening to us all, but what can we do apart from keep going on the internet complaining until they get the idea that we're not going to give them money until they give us something worth watching. And if it turns out it is a massive success because of all the weirdos that enjoy it at this point in time, then I guess the problem is much bigger than I first thought. But let's not think about that right now, it's the weekend. So, once again, that's everything I have for you today. I would like to thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.